Welcome back to the Now and Then podcast, where we talk about what's happening in the natural, organic, and wellness industry right now and what it means for what's next. I'm Ashley Cornell, Director of Regulatory Affairs and Policy.
And I'm Lindsay Walker, VP of Marketing and Communications. And we definitely kicked off the new year running. We have new research, new ideas, and a lot of momentum building towards CHFA Now Vancouver.
All right. Let's get started. So I know a big one is CHFA Now Vancouver is coming up fast, but there is a lot more underway already this year besides the show. So we have lots to talk about.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited. The show is coming. And I think one of the things that I'm most excited about is that we'll be launching our brand new consumer research study at the show. It's called Trust, Transparency, and Trade-offs. And it's a national study that we did. And it looks at how Canadians are navigating product claims, certifications, and information sources, particularly how it relates to health, wellness, food, like our industry specifically.
Am I correct to say that this study kind of evolved from what we were seeing and hearing in the market?
Totally. And if you remember last year, I think we did talk about it, but we were seeing growing skepticism across the board. You know, there was skepticism of label information, there was skepticism around influencers and even emerging tools like AI. And so what we wanted to do with this research is really kind of dig into what's actually driving trust and credibility in today's world, especially as it relates to claims and certifications. So things like transparency, regulation, and how people decide who and what to believe when they're, standing in front of a shelf trying to decide on a product.
It sounds interesting. It sounds like it's not really just about what people are buying, but also why they feel like confident to buy certain things over others.
Yeah, exactly. I've kind of been starting prepping for the session in a couple of weeks, which if anyone is interested, it does take place Friday, February 20th at 3:45 p.m. Pacific time. Note that in your calendars. There's a lot of interesting nuggets in there that I think really, really will help brands and retailers think differently about how they communicate with their customers. So yeah, more to come there as we prep for the show. But can I tell you about another topic that I'm also super excited in? Okay, yeah. We're also hosting a retailer exclusive breakfast on Saturday morning before the show. And this year we're kind of taking it beyond the trends that we usually talk about at that breakfast. And we're giving retailers a bit more insight into how shoppers will buy wellness in 2026, looking at things like the impacts of wellness fatigue and economic forces and how that really translates at store shelf.
That sounds super interesting. I know we've talked a lot about economic pressures over the last number of months, but it would also be interesting to understand how wellness fatigue, you said, is shaping things. But when I hear wellness fatigue, I hope that this isn't something that's bad for our industry.
Yeah, I know it does sound bad, but not bad at all. It's just a new reality that we have to navigate. People are hit with a lot of information. So I think it's definitely something we should dig into a little bit more on our next episode, especially if you can't come to the show. I don't want anyone to miss out on these insights.
I'd love to do that. So we'll plan that for next time. For today, I wanted to ask you about another thing that will be happening at the show. I know it's something that you're really excited about, and it's called Deck the Aisles.
Yes, this one's fun. I am very excited about this one. And I know it may seem like we just wrapped the holiday season, but if you're in retail, you're already actually starting to think about how holiday season 2026 will look. So what we're doing is we're bringing that to the Vancouver Convention Center. And the idea is really to help retailers start thinking about their holiday pre-books earlier. And there's going to be inspiration, seasonal storytelling, merchandising. And of course, to make it fun, there's going to be a contest as well for those who show up.
That sounds awesome. When you think about planning for the holidays, even on a personal level, it kind of always sneaks up on you. So if you're in retail, you definitely need to be prepared in advance.
Yeah, I mean, even this month going fast, already close to February. I know we're going rapid fire through the can't miss events at the show, but I know there's a lot going on. I don't want anyone to miss out who is coming to the show.
And I guess before we move on, I also want to maybe narrow in a little bit. We've just announced the 8 finalists for Vancouver's CHFA Launchpad.
Yeah, this one is always a favorite. I think a lot of people probably know what Launchpad is, but if they don't, it's where early stage brands who are really doing thoughtful and innovative work get to be spotlighted. So I'll give a big shout out to the finalists. So we have Ariana's Naturals Superfood Saffron Tea Blends. We have Crumble's Protein Rice, Dojivi, I hope I'm saying that right, for Protection Coffee Mix, Fromage Protein Pops, Origins Seawater Electrolytes, Suku Kids Green Multi Plus, and then Vantage Noon Vacation Skin Redness Recovery Overnight Mask.
Awesome. Okay, maybe we can move on and zoom in a little bit, or zoom out a little bit, I should say, and look at what's happening more broadly in the industry.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the team here always keeps an eye on what's happening in the broader sense. And one thing that really caught our attention recently was a food dive report looking at how grocers are sourcing small and local brands.
I guess this kind of ties in with our trust, transparency, and trade-offs research as well.
Yeah, it does. You know, one thing that we were seeing in the data, especially when it comes to claims and certifications, is that that locally made claim is really resonating with Canadians. And I think if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. You know, when you say locally made, especially like Canadian made, it feels really familiar, intuitive, and immediately meaningful. People can already understand what they're getting with that claim. They can, you know, kind of imagine it in their head.
Yeah, when you think locally made, it's kind of just a very quick trust signal, and people don't have to decode it like they do other types of claims.
Yeah, again, like I said, it's, you know, you can imagine where the product's made, who made it. And I think that proximity builds trust. And we're talking about wellness fatigue, we're talking about skepticism, you know, and in a time when people feel really overwhelmed by information and competing claims, it is a nice one.
And for retailers, it's a reminder that local sourcing, it does play a real role in building credibility at the store shelves. It's not just, you know, a values play. It's actually part of how trust gets built.
Very well said. You should be a retailer.
Okay, so another trend pulse we wanted to flag comes out of the Winter Fancy Fair show earlier this month.
Yeah, good to keep an eye on trends that are happening at other shows and in other countries. And some of the themes we saw popping up from that show are consistent with what we're seeing more broadly and some of the trends that we're tracking as well.
And things look like they're moving towards like simpler, more transparent formulations, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. A focus on everyday functionality rather than over-engineered or overcomplicated wellness. A little bit of a hint to that wellness fatigue I was talking about.
Right. And I guess products that feel more accessible, whether it's financially accessible, culturally, or even emotionally. For example, like products that remind you of your childhood. They're really sensorial and help you experience the product on a different level.
Yeah, totally. You can just, again, put yourself in the product. And I think that's really cool. I think what's interesting is how much of this, again, kind of comes back to trust, you know, less hype, more clarity, less novelty for novelty's sake, and just more relevance to how products fit into your real life.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So before, I'm going to take it kind of a little bit over from you. Before we dive into some regulatory updates, which I know you're always gracious to give us, I did want to flag 2 upcoming education sessions that are, I think, especially important for anyone working in natural health products.
Okay. So one of them is an in-person workshop in Vancouver, and it will be focused on NHP GMP compliance as well as inspection readiness.
I think this one is really timely from everything I'm hearing from your team.
Yeah, very. I think with Health Canada's updated NHP GMP requirements taking effect this March and GMP inspections increasing, I think the workshop is going to be great. It's designed to be very practical and will prepare companies to be inspection ready.
The workshop will walk through regulatory changes, what inspectors are looking for, and best practices for record keeping and documentation, which I know, again, you know a lot about probably.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so it'll be great. It takes place February 19th, and it's from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., so full day at the Gowlings Law Office in Vancouver. So registration is required, but discounts do apply for CHFA members, so that's great. And we'll link the registration details in the show notes.
Okay, the second session I wanted to ask you about was the NHPRS webinar focused on high performance thin layer chromatography, or HPTLC. This sounds more in your wheelhouse.
So this webinar looks at how HPTLC is being used to support identity and quality testing of natural health products. So it gives expert insight and also real world applications from, I think they have like global leaders in analytical science. So it'll be great. It takes place Thursday, February 5th, and it's from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern. And it's virtual via Zoom, and it's free.
Awesome. So yeah, if you're in the NHP world, I think those are two great sessions to definitely check out. So as I kind of alluded to, let's dive into some regulatory topics. It's looking like a big regulatory theme within the industry for 2026 is going to be red tape reduction.
Yeah, that's right. It is. I think it will be the theme of 2026. To kick it off, ongoing right now until the end of February, so February 28th, the Red Tape Reduction Office is doing a horizontal review of 5 red tape themes to examine key challenges that industry is facing. So the 5 key themes are: the first is supporting regulatory efficiency for project overviews, I should say. The second is getting products to market faster. So this is working on reducing complexity, reducing regulatory delays. So hoping to reduce the time to bring new innovative products to market, which is great. So this one will have a big impact on our industry. The third one is reducing barriers to business productivity. So this is things like lighter reporting. So in data collection and reporting, can be really burdensome administratively to businesses. It takes up a lot of time, a lot more time than, you would think to realize. So trying to work to reduce barriers there, which is great. The fourth is supporting international trade, and greater efficiency at the border. So this one focuses on any sort of regulatory irritants and inefficiencies that are impacting trade. And then lastly, the fifth one is enhancing regulatory service delivery. So this is looking to improve the experience for industry or parties that are actually navigating the regulatory system.
And I was actually going to ask you, because when you were saying lightening the reporting, it's not about making things less safe or anything. It's just about getting more efficient, right?
Yeah, it's just taking a deeper look into where there are opportunities. And we don't know exactly what these will be yet, but that's the idea of the areas that they're looking into. So I guess no commitments of any specifics at this moment, but it's nice to hear. I mean, I think these are words that that anyone in industry would welcome. So it's a good sign, a good time to get involved as well.
Totally. Like you said, I think anything that can speed up innovation is going to be well received. So I mean, we can do this at our year-end recap, but you heard it here first. I think 2026, the big theme, red tape reduction. And because even when it's not from page news, policy is always shaping what's possible in this industry. I know we have a lot more to report on.
Yes, we do. So there are a few updates I think worth flagging for this January, and not necessarily because everything has kind of changed overnight, but because we're starting to see signals about where things may be headed next. So one of the ones I wanted to talk about was we received just this past week the What We Heard report from CFIA following the consultation on plant-based alternatives to eggs.
Okay, so for the folks listening who might not track every CFIA consultation, the What We Heard report is usually an early indicator, right?
Yeah, kind of. So what will happen is, they'll put out an early consultation, stakeholders will provide feedback, and then government releases a What We Heard report, meaning what did we hear from the stakeholder engagement. So it's just kind of summarizing all the stakeholder feedback. But what it often also signals is kind of where they might be focusing on for this policy or for future policy work. In this case particularly, they're actually picking this file back up after the consultation, which was completed back in 2024. So a big signal of, yes, it was on pause, but I think it could be an indication that they are going to start working on these alternatives, plant-based alternatives to, in this situation, guidance specifically on eggs, but I think it could suggest kind of a renewed attention on how plant-based alternatives in general might be something that we're seeing in 2026.
And so this does tie into a bigger conversation about plant-based foods overall, correct?
Yeah, there is plant-based alternatives to, say, dairy and meat could follow the conversation on the alternatives to eggs. This report focused on eggs specifically, but it didn't actually introduce any new rules right now. It's just a continuation of the consultation, and it's a sign that the file is, again, moving forward after a relatively quiet period.
So what do you think brands should keep on their radar then?
I would just say at this moment, pay attention, engage early, right? If you have a position, make sure it's heard now so that your voice is part of the conversation before policy decisions are finalized.
Always do the consultations. That's what we tried to
Mhm.
impart last year. Always do the consultations. Okay, another area I know we wanted to flag. It isn't technically regulatory, but it's regulatory in nature, I think. It involves labeling and third-party certifications. It's ultra-processed foods, or I guess more colloquially, more specifically, non-UPFs.
Yeah, so this has been a topic that's kind of trending. It was trending last year. I don't know if trending is even the correct word. It's becoming part of the conversation. So,
Yeah.
um, and I believe it will continue into 2026. And I think that's especially true because the non UFP or UPFs, non ultra processed food verified standards, was launched. So it's not a formal regulatory framework. However, it can influence how products are positioned, substantiated, trusted. It's kind of it will set the course for consumer expectations. And actually, the certification is brought to us by the same company that oversees the non-GMO certification. So it's the non-GMO project, and they started this in response to like scientific evidence that was linking ultra processed food to negative health outcomes. And we've been seeing like equally strong consumer demand for these
Mhm.
clear distinctions and in a credible way to identify less processed foods on shelves.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going back to this trust, transparency, and trade-off study that I'm working through the data right now. We know the non-GMO project certification, it's really well understood. So good to know that it's coming from this group as well. They do a good job in breaking that down, I think, for consumers. But processed foods has really become a loaded word. Like you said, I think consumers are trying to avoid these products.
It has, and what this standard is trying to do is bring clarity to the conversation. Really, like the non UPF verified standard, what it does is it lays out the evidence based criteria for identifying foods that avoid kind of excessive industrial processing or engineered additives, those types of things. So
Or I was going to say, not just a marketing claim, right? Like they're
no,
trying
it's
to
not.
actually put more rigor behind it, it sounds.
Exactly. Yeah. It actually provides a transparent like foundation for brands and retailers who want to align with these guidelines and a clear third party, I guess, definition of what a non ultra processed food is. So the standard was launched just in November, but then enrollment into the verification program just started earlier this month. So
Yeah, I think
it's
even
brand
though
new.
it's voluntary, I really feel like it feels like something that could influence expectations pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. And I think these types of non regulatory initiatives often shape, as I was saying, kind of consumer and retailer expectations. And it actually could serve as another opportunity for the natural, organic, and wellness industry, the industry we represent, to actually set themselves apart from the larger food industry.
That's it, the mainstream, but we're
Yeah,
mainstream too. But yeah, I
yeah.
agree with you. A good differentiation point as well. Okay, another regulatory topic that is signaling change is the non-alcoholic and alcohol-free labeling for alcoholic alternatives. That's a little long word, but basically the non-alcoholic space, and things are happening there. So tell me about that.
Yes. So we have been advocating for change to the definition of non alcoholic because currently CFA, their labeling guidance states that non alcoholic beverages should be beverages with an alcohol volume of less than or equal to 0.05%. So we've been asking for a change. We've been asking for this to increase to 0.5% because it aligns with international standards. And there are many reasons, but what we've been told is that Health Canada is currently reviewing the requirements for non-alcoholic and alcohol-free claims, and they are developing a formal policy. So as it was previously only kind of mentioned in CFIA guidance, now Health Canada is taking this on, and they are going to develop a formal policy. And it's targeted to be released spring 2026. So after Health Canada's policy is published, CFIA then update its guidance accordingly, I guess, if necessary.
So very much still in the development phase.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So at this stage, government, they haven't really indicated which direction the policy will take, whether it will move towards like these international norms, like allowing beverages with less than or equal to 0.5% alcohol volume to be labeled as non-alcoholic, or whether their policy is actually just going to reinforce the current CFIA guidance, which points to a much lower threshold.
I mean, I guess this can be this like middle limbo, if you will. It can kind of be uncertain or tough for brands to navigate.
Yeah, it can. Even if somebody that's been advocating towards this, we're hearing from Health Canada, but we're not given any indication which direction it will take. So the uncertainty can be a little bit unsettling, but at the same time, they have given clear interim direction. So Health Canada, until they finalize their policy, they said, no labeling changes are required for beverages carrying non-alcoholic or alcohol-free claims right now. It provided that they contain equal to or less than 0.5. So this is the level we've been advocating for, not the current CFA guidance. So that's good.
I think that's an important clarification.
It is. And CFA has also indicated that their enforcement efforts will focus on risk rather than strict compliance to their guidance level, the lower threshold guidance level. So, and that will be throughout this interim period.
Which I think also, it's a recognition of the lower risk nature of this category as well, right?
It is. I think there's that might give us some indication. I think it would also be a challenge for Health Canada to introduce a policy that adds red tape right now. It would create misalignment with, trading partners and international markets. And given the kind of focus of export diversification in the Canadian government right now, I think, that would be especially challenging.
So take no action right now, but definitely stay tuned. I know, like you said, you've done a lot of work on this, so we'll keep everybody informed as this rolls out.
Yeah, we'll stay engaged on this file. And we do expect further discussion with Health Canada as the policy develops. So we'll continue to advocate for the opportunity to review the document and an opportunity for Canada to set its standards the same as international markets.
Okay, and then there's a broader capacity question.
Yeah, so kind of speaking about CFIA, we can't really ignore the recent news of CFA workforce reduction. I think reports are indicating more than 1,300 jobs may be cut.
It's a lot. It's significant.
It is. I mean, any reductions in inspection or regulatory capacity has downstream impacts for sure, from timelines of policy work, timelines of, anything that you work with a CFA on. But it also could impact enforcement consistency. It doesn't mean like oversight is going to disappear, but it does introduce uncertainty that I guess businesses should be aware of and that they should plan for in the year ahead.
Yeah, always be prepared. So I guess that was a lot. So what are the big takeaways from all these updates?
I mean, as per usual, regulations aren't standing still. Even when kind of the changes are just incremental or they're happening behind the scenes, there's always something going on. And I think this year is the year to, again, stay engaged, proactive, and make sure you're informed about the regulations and policies impacting your business.
Yeah, like we said, it's maybe not always front page news, but it does have material impacts. So definitely something you want to keep an eye on. Okay, so we have the show, we have amazing trends, we've got new research, we've got a lot to talk about. So I think we have an episode for this month. We're just getting started. So yeah, we'll dive into some post-show updates, news. We can share a little bit more of the research, I think, next month. I'm excited.